Hi viewers, welcome to SEKHAR'S Bio Factory for NEET. In this video, I am going to explain one of the transportation method. It is frequently observed in living cells for the transportation of molecules is called active transport. So previously we discussed diffusion and facilitated diffusion. In diffusion and facilitated diffusion, the movement of molecules or substances, it always takes place from higher concentration to lower concentration based on concentration gradient without using ATP energy. But in active transport, the movement of molecules or substances, it is takes place against concentration gradient by utilizing ATP energy. Such transportation is called active transport. In active transport, active it refers the utilization of ATP energy. When we observe the active transportation method, in active transportation method, the entire transportation of molecules, it always takes place against concentration gradient. For example, it is the plasma membrane present around the living cell. In this, it is the outer side of the plasma membrane and it is the inner side of the plasma membrane. When we observe the number of molecules in both outside and inside of the molecules, inside of the membrane, in this inner side of the plasma membrane, more molecules are present. It indicates its higher concentration. In similar way, outside of the plasma membrane, there are less number of molecules. It indicates it a lower concentration. So based on concentration gradient, molecular transportation take place generally, but in active transport, the transportation of molecule it takes place against concentration gradient. That means from lower concentration to higher concentration. For the transportation of the molecule against concentration gradient, it needs the utilization of ATP energy. Especially this entire transportation process is carried out by the special membrane proteins present in plasma membrane. These are called pump proteins. So these pump proteins, it play an important role to transport the molecules against concentration gradient. When these pump proteins actively pump the molecules from region of lower concentration to region of its higher concentration, at this time these pump proteins can utilizes ATP molecules. So ATP molecules are utilized for the transportation of these molecules. Now it is called active transport. In this way, the active transportation takes place through pump proteins against concentration gradient by the utilization of ATP energy. The main characters of this active transport is, in this active transport, the first very most important point, the movement of molecule it always takes place against concentration gradient. That means molecules are transported against concentration gradient. It is the very most important character of active transport. At the same time, for the transportation of molecule, special membrane proteins are required. These are called as pump proteins. So protein pumps are pump proteins. Pump proteins are required for the transportation of molecules from lower concentration to its higher concentration. At the time of this transportation, these pump proteins can actively pump the molecules against concentration gradient by utilizing ATP energy. Utilization of ATP energy take place. Utilization of energy, ATP energy take place in active transport. And along with this transportation process, when it reach maximum rate, at this time the protein pumps get saturated. For example, the protein pumps have a capability to transport certain number of molecules at a time. If the transportation rate it reach maximum, at this time the protein pumps get saturated. The protein pumps get saturated. And one more very important thing, this active transportation is more specific. That means the active transportation is more specific. It allow only selected molecules, not all molecules, only selected molecules. Only selected molecules. And one more very important thing, this entire active transportation process, it is more sensitive to inhibitors. Why? Because the protein pumps present in plasma membrane, these protein pumps have lateral side chains. If any inhibitor it binds on this lateral side chains, immediately the process of transportation will be stopped. So one more important character of this transportation is these pump proteins are more sensitive to inhibitors. So these are the characters of active transport. In active transport, the term active, it represents utilization of ATP energy. In active transport, for the transportation of molecules against concentration gradient, the ATP energy is required, and the most important characters of this active transport is the molecular transportation take place against concentration gradient. For the transportation of these molecules from lower concentration to higher concentration, a specialized membrane proteins called pump proteins are required, and utilization of ATP energy take place, and protein pumps it gets saturated when the transportation rate reach maximum. And this entire active transportation process is more specific. It allows only selected molecules. And one more important point, the pump proteins are more sensitive to inhibitors. And one more important character of this active transport is, in this active transport, the movement of molecules always take place from lower concentration to higher concentration. The movement of molecules always take place from lower concentration to higher concentration. Lower concentration to higher concentration by the utilization of ATP energy. Such type of transportation is called uphill transport. So these are the characters of active transport.